Hey there, welcome to the Author Castle and today's best-selling author interview with Dr. Rachel Talton, the author of Flourish. Rachel, thank you for joining me here at the Author Castle.
I'm so happy to be here. So happy to be here.
I am your host, Dr. Angela, the author incubator, and my goal here today in this conversation is to dive deep on a couple of topics and really focus on what does it take to write a book that makes a difference, to birth something new into the world that you know will help and change people. That's something that Dr. Rachel has done time and time again and did with this book, Flourish. We'll hear about her journey. And I also want to take some time today for you to share with us some ideas on what it means to flourish and how we can take some of the ideas from the book into our lives. Awesome. So you guys can follow along. You could head over to Amazon and get a copy of Dr. Rachel's book. The name of the book, again, is Flourish, and you can see on the screen Dr. Rachel Talton. So let's just get started with why this book. What were you thinking when you came up with the idea, I want to write a book? What were your hopes for that?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me, and it's always so good to be with you, and I just love you to death.
I love you back.
So I wanted to say that publicly. But, you know, when I first thought of the idea of writing Flourish, I had been through tremendous challenges in my life, and we'll talk about a little bit about that shortly. But I had come to a place in my life that I really was flourishing. I had this amazing husband, and after I'd lost my first husband to a massive heart attack, you know, it was incredible just to have the blessing of being in love again. We were working together, we had a great business, both of us are civic leaders and philanthropists, and we do everything together. And I looked in the mirror one day and realized that although I thought I was flourishing, I wasn't. I looked behind the mask and all this beautiful makeup we have on, and the golden mask that we put on, and I realized that that something was missing. And you know, after the shock of realizing that even though I thought I had it all, I didn't, I also realized that there are other women who are successful and doing really well, and they needed help understanding how to flourish as well.
And so why a book, though? Obviously, there's lots of ways that you could bring that into the world. So yes. Why a book?
So a couple of reasons. The first is that I had this conference, and we only allow 100 people. So, you know, you can't. I want to touch and transform the lives of 1 million people, and only 100 at a time. So a book was a great way to touch thousands of people very quickly. I also know that I'm a geek in 6-inch heels. I am, right? I mean, and you know it too. It's like the research on what it means to flourish and how people flourish and why they flourish and why they don't was intriguing, and I wanted to share that. And then the third reason is it's a great tool for your business. It's a great tool to take out into the marketplace and share your ideas when you only have a little bit of time. So it's a great way for people to take a little piece of you home with them and have them flourish right along with you.
Okay, so let's talk about time, because a lot of people think that being busy is a great reason to not write a book. Mm-hmm. So I know for you, the idea for this book didn't happen at a time that was particularly slow for you. You weren't living in a cabin in Maine.
Yeah, with my
collecting
Birkenstocks.
Social Security and, you know, like, let me carve out a couple years to write a book.
Yeah.
The book happened pretty quickly, and it happened at a time you were pretty busy. So what are your thoughts around time? And when you were thinking about writing the book, were you worried I might not have enough time to write the book?
Yeah, I was petrified that I wouldn't have enough time. I mean, and you know that. We had those conversations. So the 3 days to done process, moving in with you basically and having you be the
Book
I don't want to
dominatrix.
say, yeah, book dominatrix is awesome.
Shit.
Yes, I was going to say goat herder. So
Also goat herder, sometimes a cat herder.
Is perfect. And so that was great for me. Trust is a big deal, as you know. So I have a PhD in it. I studied trust, and I trusted you. I trusted you with this process. So that was a big step for me.
So let me ask that, based on how busy you were, because I know you have a business.
2 businesses.
I was going to say, I think you have more than one.
Yeah.
So you have 2 businesses. You're on a couple boards.
Oh, yeah. I'm on 6 boards now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
By a couple, I mean 6.
Yeah.
So you're on a half dozen boards. You're running 2 businesses.
Yeah.
You're obviously married and have family commitments,
Yes.
like the rest of us, on top of all of that. Do you think the idea I'm too busy to write a book could have stopped you from getting this done? Can that just be a good reason sometimes to not write a book? Like, you got too much going on. I believe in divine timing. Sometimes it's just not the right time.
So yes, I think that there is divine timing. I also think that there's commitment, right? So the book had probably been in me, or some form of the book, for a while, but making the commitment and then sticking to the commitment is a big deal. I also don't think that. I think there's divine timing. I was probably busier even than I am now, right, when I wrote the book. So I created the time, I made the commitment, and I just did it. You know that we were on a cruise. We went to it. Remember, like in the middle of our editing process, I was in Northern Africa and Italy and around the world with my family. So I couldn't go on all of the excursions, but when I came back and I focused on my book, I felt good about doing that. So it's about the commitment. I do think that divine timing is an important construct to honor, right? Because for some people, it really isn't the right time. We talked about the emotional, trauma that people have experienced. So sometimes it has to be the right time for them. But I think, for me, finding you was a big deal, quite frankly, because if I hadn't, I still may not have written it, because of the trust that I had in you. And I don't say that just because we're here.
I just remembered our whole conversations leading up. You're like, no, I'm writing the book with you.
Yeah, and that's it.
Because I kept trying to tell you to write it with someone else. And you're like, look.
No, it's going to be with you or not at all. Certainly not, anytime soon. I also think that making the commitment and just sticking to it, making the investment in yourself and investing the time.
So here's my thing. Obviously, he had support. But when Barack Obama was senator, he wrote a book. Mm-hmm. There are many CEOs of corporations who have written a book while they're CEO. There are many, presidents that have written books while they're president.
Absolutely.
We all get the same 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We just get to decide what we want to do with it.
There's no question.
And you could use that time. You could make the commitment to, vacationing more without worrying about a book while you're vacationing, right?
Right. But then I wouldn't have flourished.
So you use a term that I use with almost all of my authors I have since the day I met you, which is the idea of a God job.
Yes.
So I want you to share that concept because it has changed my life. It's changed how I work with my clients. What is a God job, and why would a God job be more important than laying on the beach?
Yeah, so sometimes laying on the beach might be the God job,
Okay.
right? Right. But so when I designed Flourish, when I looked in the mirror and sort of had that epiphany, really is what it was, to start doing the conferences and to do more research. It wasn't really a book at that time, but I knew I wanted to understand what it meant to flourish better. It felt like a divine commitment, which put a different level of responsibility on me, but it also, every single time we would do a conference or I'd coach a client or any of those things that I didn't really know how to do. Remember, I had a completely different business. It felt like it was a mission. And, and it's changed my life for a couple of reasons. One, when I say God job, now I have to do it right. it's not just me, and we've talked about this. It's like you're responsible for, this person's, for the 5 seconds that you have their trust or the 10 minutes that you have their trust. You're responsible for their lives. And, that's a huge responsibility. So when I think of Flourish, I think it's my God job. I love Synergy and the work that we do. We do great work. But the work that we do with Flourish is changing people's lives. And that responsibility is huge.
It's almost beyond you. That's what I say. I think if you want to write a book that's a trophy or a bucket list item, you could do that anytime. Let's wait until you have 6 months clear and you could be at the cabin in Maine. But when you're working for somebody else,
then you have to do it.
All right, I guess I'll do it now while I'm running 2 companies and on 6 boards and taking a trip to North Africa. Now seems good.
Yeah,
let's
now
just do
seems
this
good.
thing.
And of course, my mom, my family, my husband was like, "You're gonna do what?" But they're so supportive. And now that it's done, my mom's like, "You need to read this book." Yeah, exactly.
It's dedicated
change
to
your
her,
life.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the writing process. And I particularly want to focus on the fact that you are a doctor. You have gone through many years of schooling. I was going to try and count how many years of schooling,
it's
but
a lot.
20-something years of schooling. And you were trained to write in a certain way, as all academics are. Obviously, writing a trade paperback is different than writing a research paper for a higher education institute. Talk to me a little bit about the writing process. What was easy for you because of that background, because you'd written so much, and then what was hard for you, and how did you work through that?
Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother interview, people. We could do a whole thing, right? So what I think was hard for me was to write less. Right. So as an academic, our job is to share as much information as we possibly can so that information can be disseminated and consumed. Right. So writing less was a challenge. Also, we don't have opinions as scientists. We have facts and evidence. And so every time I say something, I have to back it up. And you and I, again, had that conversation. You're like, no, just tell me how you feel. Or tell me what they said.
You're the authority. Like, I believe you.
No, I need, I need to know what the literature says. So, but I think that the balance, like the push and pull that you and I had, and that me and my amazing editor had, was great because it helped me bring the words down and not write as much. But also, I think that my academic background, that the evidence was also there, so a scientist can read my book and enjoy it and get something out of it, as well as a 15-year-old who's trying to flourish in their life. So I think that the balance was really good. The editing process was hard. I think probably certainly according to you, one of the longest and most, just complex because of that. But I think the product was just amazing.
Right. One of the other things that I know happens for people is right before the book is about to be finished, a lot of times people have they doubt themselves. They have, what do I want to say? Second thoughts, there's an expression I'm losing, but they're like reconsidering, was this right? So were there moments for you that you were like, maybe I don't want to be seen? Like there's this moment of, I'm going to write a book because I want to be seen. And then there's this moment of, maybe I don't want to be seen.
I think maybe it showed up a little bit differently for me. I think that evidence piece, because I had written, right? So I just kept feeling like I've got to provide evidence, and they're telling me not to have so much evidence, just to share myself. And I think so. It wasn't necessarily that I didn't want to share myself. It was that we need a fact to back that up, right? We need somebody else to have
corroborate the
exactly,
evidence.
Exactly.
It's not true.
Yes. So I think, but I think that
But what
process
about
was
things like you tell some pretty personal stories in the book, and I know for a lot of authors they will get the idea to write a book because of something traumatic that happened to them, that they know they could help other people through. And then they write the book, and it feels so good to write it and to share that story theoretically.
Right.
And then, like, I remember one person was telling me she was actually a drug addict. No, she was not a drug addict while she was writing her book, but 20 years before, she'd been a heroin addict, and she had a very high-profile sales career. But she was going to the bathroom, and she was shooting up heroin. So she'd written this amazing book, this like incredibly powerful tale, and then she was right about to release it, and she's like, I am so terrified of what people will think of me. Like, they're gonna find out I was a drug addict. I'm like, who are the people?
Right.
She's like my old coworkers. I'm like, from 20 years ago? Okay, like let's say they think you were a terrible person 20 years ago. Like, what happened? So what does that mean? So you tell some very personal stories, and you're somebody who has an extremely successful professional career. And so being seen as someone who maybe also has a personal life,
right?
And even in academia, like it's almost like in academia, they train you not to be a person,
right?
Like you're just a data gathering machine.
Absolutely.
So that's what I'm kind of getting at is like, was there a moment where you had to say, do I want to share this deeply about my personal stuff?
Well, probably the most personal thing that I share, as you know, was that my husband had a massive heart attack, and when I lost him,
when you were very young,
and as was he, and he had not been sick, and so many of the people that I would be worried about knew that, because my catharsis was speaking about it. I wanted everyone that I knew to have insurance, first of all, right? And to know that every second of our lives just can't be taken for granted. So I literally took on speaking engagements that I never would have taken on, just because I wanted everyone to know to love the people that you love, show them, tell them, I just had to say it. So I wasn't concerned about them knowing that Mark had passed away, because everyone that I knew did know, and many people I didn't know knew, right? That was hard. Being remarried to Jim and being a widow be such a big part of my life, just concerned about him and making sure that how does he read it?
Yeah, I think this is what happens a lot with our stories. Like, we don't want to hear a story about Mark where you don't love him and cherish that relationship, but then it's also you're talking about
right. And thank God for Jimmy, as he's just such a loving, caring human being that he's like, it's who you are. I mean, it is, if you hadn't been through that relationship, I wouldn't have the amazing women that I have today. You know what I mean? So he's okay with it. But I still have to make sure that, when I speak about Mark, that I also talk about Jimmy. And it's a honey, if you're watching, I love you so much.
I love you too.
Yes, and Angela loves you too. But that I, remind people, because they're like, oh my God, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm actually, God is good. And he's given me this amazing angel, right? So yeah, I think that, but if I had been a drug addict, just thinking about your story, and, I'm a bank executive and I'm going in the bathroom shooting up heroin, I don't know if I could tell that story. That's a tough.
But I think your story is similar in that you have always been the girl who had it all together. And part of this story is
I didn't have a doggone thing together. Nothing.
That to me is the big admission that like you have always been 100% nailed on, and in this book you really expose
not only when I lost Mark, again, when I thought I was flourishing, when by all mathematical accounts I was, I still felt that there was this huge hole in my heart and in my soul. What's missing? What on earth could I do? I can't join another board. I can't get another degree. I'm terminal. You know what I mean? Like I'm in love and the man loves me. We travel, we have this amazing life. And
this is where people start drinking. This is where people start over shopping.
Absolutely.
Like all
the
stuff. Carbohydrates.
Yeah. I mean, for me, carbohydrate, I'm eating the ones that you turned down. Right. So it's really getting a sense that there are all of these pieces of us, and we tend to focus on one or maybe one and a half, and it's really important to focus on all of them, or at least to honor primacy. What is most important for you right now? What is most memorable, measurable? What matters most to you at this moment in your life? Every moment.
So let's talk. So you get the book done, you get it out there. It's been out for about
almost a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what's happened in that year? How have you used the book? How has the book impacted people? Tell me a little about the journey of being a best-selling author.
Being a best-selling author is just like, wow, Dr. Rachel Talton, best-selling author. That's just like, let me put my hair up a little bit and shake my hair. So there's that. That is it's a great boost for, thousands of people have downloaded and read and purchased my book. So
don't you think it's interesting though too, when you meet someone for the first time and you introduce yourself and they find out you're an author, really nothing in a way is different about you a year ago or now, right? Like before the book and after. But the reaction that people, isn't that the most interesting thing?
It is. So last night, it's funny, I knew that I was going to share this with you. Last night, I had an event in Cleveland for our Link's 40th anniversary. So I had to be there for that and then fly here today. And last night, 2 people came up to me that, and one had gone to a Flourish event and she bought the book for her daughter. And another woman was like, she had never been to a Flourish event, but she downloaded the book and because it had been recommended to her. And she's like, oh my God, this is me. This is like, I'm so happy that you wrote this. And it's, so this was yesterday. So you've asked me what has happened in the year. That was last night. And I didn't know either of these women. It was just such a surprise and such a warm feel. Again, God job. It's your God
just
job.
Just like little pebbles along the way. You're doing the right thing.
You're doing the right thing. Keep going. And and you're actually helping people. Another thing is that, again, I spoke a little bit about it being good for your business. So of course, when I go and speak, I'm able to, again, you only have 20 minutes, 30 minutes, even if you have a half a day, there's no way to get all of the information into people's hands and into their hearts and into their lives. And so it's a great way to do that. It's a wonderful tool. Also, we have people that use the book at their jobs. So people are going through Flourish at work.
Like a book club, with other coworkers or on their own?
Yeah, with other coworkers and their leaders. So we've got 2 organizations that are walking through Flourish together.
I love it. Let's go back. I want to tell people a little bit about the conference. So you have a book called Flourish, but then you also have a conference called Flourish.
Yes,
we have a conference. Let's just talk about what that is and how do they play off each other.
So the conference was the first... that was the first iteration of what do I do with this knowledge that it looks like I'm flourishing, but I'm not, right? And so what came to me, what was, again, an epiphany, was that you need to create a safe space for women to have this conversation and to really engage, take the mask off, get naked, and kind of begin to think about how they've flourished. So we've had, the mayor of Baltimore, as you know, and other, huge senators and congressmen and et cetera.
And CEOs.
And many CEOs of Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 50 companies. And we also just have sort of nonprofit leaders, and so they're not all public or private sector, but also nonprofit leaders, and they come in and they talk about both the challenges that they faced, but also how they've overcome them. So they, people get real tools. And in the afternoon, so that's sort of the morning. The afternoon, then we roll up our sleeves and we do the work. We begin to ask ourselves, what are the areas in which you're flourishing? What are the areas you
have
not?
Most of the people who come to the conference, have they read the book? That's how they hear about it, or do they come to the conference and then they buy the book at the conference? Okay,
they buy the book at the conference. Because the conference has been going on longer, so So
do you have like a table at the back of the room where people can buy books?
Yes, I have a table at the back of the room.
Do you ever sign books?
I do. I have handlers, so literally there's a line, but it's okay. I'm the founder, so people who have been positively impacted by the conference want to take
a piece of you home. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Was that, you mentioned that at the beginning when I said what were you hoping for from your book? And that was one of the ideas you had in your head, that
Absolutely.
People can take a piece home.
Yeah.
Are there any things that have come out of writing your book that actually surprised you, that you didn't expect? Because that sounds like that's what you wanted, that's what you got, which is great. Is there any opportunities that have come from being an author, or even ways that you have changed personally that
this may or may not answer your question, but it comes to mind. So in preparation for my TIE talk, I went and just kind of skimmed the book because why not?
What did
right?
I say?
Yeah, you're right. And I realized that it's a really good book.
I love that realization, because you got some distance on it now.
Yes, I have distance, and it's not just people telling me that it's a good book. It's really well done. I'm proud of it. Like the second edition would be just edits. I mean, so that surprised me yesterday as well. Yeah. So
you have two businesses other than Flourish?
I have one business other than Flourish.
Okay, so you have your main business, which is, we'll say, a full-time job. And then has the role that Flourish plays in your life, or the amount of time, has that increased or decreased? Because it has.
Oh, were you going to say because
on
of
purpose?
the book?
Well, or since the book.
Since the book, absolutely. I mean, it has... and purposefully it has increased.
So you start off with this business, Synergy. It's running, it's doing its thing. You're in business for a while. You have this idea for the Flourish conferences, and it's a couple hours a month.
Right.
It's a couple hours a week. And then how did you know, okay, now's the time to write a book. Now's the time to go from a couple hours a month or a couple hours a week to a bigger.
To a much bigger.
Yeah.
I think that it's like the book and the conference sort of play off of one another. So the book is a way for people. The conference is only once a year, so we'll be in DC, in February, and then not again until another February, unless we do a luncheon or some smaller event. And so it's a way to close that gap so that people can keep flourishing. So they just play together. How did I know I wanted it to grow? When we sell out in every city and we're invited to more and more cities. So now the question becomes, how do you duplicate yourself, which I know we continue to ask
you that. Yeah.
How do we duplicate ourselves, which is my next step.
Because you're in how many cities now?
We're now in 4 cities. So we're in Chicago, Indianapolis, Washington, D.C., and Cleveland. And we've been strongly invited to Atlanta for next year.
I can see that.
Yeah. So, I mean, strongly, 2 companies are like, what do we need to do to bring you here? So
what's your process? When you think about your legacy, which I think this book is really part of your legacy. Not that Synergy isn't, but this is like the message, the Dr. Rachel message that gets left behind, that expands beyond you
life, absolutely.
in your life. How do you make those decisions, like you could be in 5 cities next year, frankly, you could be in 50 cities next year. And I know you well enough to know whatever you set your mind to, you will do.
Yes.
So what do you pray? Do you have mentors?
Yes.
How do you make the decision?
So yes, I have mentors. I pray first. I spend a lot of time talking with my husband. So, and you and I have talked about this as well. The time we spend together is sacred because I lost someone. So I understand that you can't get it back. There's no way to get it back. So I don't, it would need to be okay with him. So now our process is he sees the opportunity to touch and transform the lives of 1 million women by 2020. That's the goal.
1 million women by 2020.
yeah, that's the goal. So there's the book, there's an online coaching process, there's the conference, it's like, how do you create ways where you physically and mentally and emotionally don't have to be there, but that people can get the same knowledge, or at least
that's
close.
what's the power of having the process.
Yes.
Now you've got that framework that other people can teach, and it's still part of you going with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So next year, the goal is to at least find one other person that can do what I do. Just one, and they don't, they don't have to be a duplicate of me, but this needs to be their dream job. Remember the email that you put up, like, write your dream job? That needs to be their dream job to help women flourish. And they need, obviously, the academic and the experience, the background. I've sat on both sides of the executive desk, and so the knowledge to really share with a high level woman, because that's our client.
So if somebody wanted to learn more about you, obviously Dr. Rachel Talton's book Flourish is on Amazon, but how else can people get in touch with you, learn about you and the Flourish movement?
So there's flourishleaders.com. It can go to our website. We also have a really cool tool called areyouflourishing.com.
Oh,
areyouflourishing.com. Yes, it is. It's a 5-minute assessment. It's complimentary. It's free, and it really it allows you to take 5 minutes of your time, get immediate feedback on where you're doing well and what areas you might not be doing so well and might need some support. And it's a really, really cool tool.
And that's for people who aren't quite ready to read the book.
Yes.
This is
it's
start there, and then you'll know exactly what chapters to focus on.
Yes, exactly. And there's also Synergy Loyalty, which if people need marketing services, I always want to say that as well.
Excellent. All right, little plug for Synergy Loyalty. Well, Dr. Rachel Talton is the author of Flourish. She's also are you the founder of the Flourish conferences?
Yes,
Co-founder?
I'm the founder of the Flourish conferences.
Which is an amazing undertaking. And I think the most powerful thing about Dr. Rachel's work is that it is a movement that goes far beyond just you wanting to share your message, but to touch and change the lives of 1 million women. We would love you to be among those 1 million women. So you can do that by downloading her book. And maybe there are 1 million people you want to reach. Maybe you want to reach 1 million school teachers, or 1 million real estate agents, or 1 million marketing executives. If you have a movement, if you have a message, you can go to theauthorincubator.com/apply and share your movement with me. We'd love to hear about it. Maybe we will write your book together, work with you on your book, and someday we'll have you here at the Author Castle talking about how your book has transformed thousands of lives on its way to millions.
Yes.
A couple years to go till 2020.
Yes, so a few years to go.
Push. So, thank you so much for joining me here at the castle. Mwah. Love you, Mama.
I love you too.
Mwah.